I had an interest in radio when I turned, 16, and our school had a program that you could join. It was kind of cool because you didn't have to go to school, but you had to have at least a B average. And so I went and I says, well, cool, I want to apply, because you had to go apply like a regular job. I said, I want to go to the doctor's office. Well, those were all full. Well, I want to go to the lawyer's office. Those were all full. I said, well, what do you have? Well, all we have left is a radio station. And that's kind of how it started. Unlike most kids who listen to the radio for the music, I didn't care about the music. I listened to the radio because I wanted to imitate the DJs. And so I started listening to a gentleman out of Dallas, Dwayne Dancer. And so Dwayne, I would just imitate him. Everything he said, I would just imitate him. And so to me, that was the excitement of listening to the radio. After the program, they hired me full-time, and they sent me to a school, Elkins Institute, to get my first-class license, because back then, in order to be on the radio by yourself, you had to have a first-class license. Otherwise, they'd have to have somebody there that they would have to pay to be there that had one. So they sent me to Elkins Institute, and I went and got my first-class license. They had me doing little odds and ends things, learning music as assistant music director, learning news, which I didn't really like doing the news, but they wanted me to learn it. And I was the station mascot, dressed up as a chicken. We called it the FM fowl. And I'd go out to all the events and dance in the outfit. And, you know, I was just doing whatever they asked me to do to learn everything that I possibly could. But being the music director was where my heart was. My senior year, I was working at a radio station, KTSA, KTFM in San Antonio, Texas. And that was the first station that hired me. But I wasn't as a DJ. I was learning behind the scenes stuff. Back then, you had to earn your way to LA. You had to come in LA with experience. Now, you know, it's a little bit different. You can come in with no experience. Matter of fact, they don't want you to have experience. But yeah, I was having an issue with the guy that brought me in and taught me a lot of things, the program director. His name was Lee Randall. And so Lee had left to go to Corpus Christi, Texas. And the new guy that came in to replace him called me in his office. And he just straight out told me, you know, I'm going to do everything within my power to get your nigga ass out of here. And, you know, at that age, I was sitting here like, you know, because that was really the first time I had racism just blown in my face like that. So I called up Lee Randall in Corpus Christi, and he just said, get out of there, don't go back. He said, come down here, and you can work part-time, and I'll help you get something else. And so I went to Corpus Christi, and he did give me part-time. He helped me I was working at a nightclub weeknights, and I was working at a TV station during the day. And that was crazy. I did that for several months before full-time finally came open at the radio station, KEYS. Lee Randall was the man. He's the one that gave me my first shot and taught me, you know, how to approach it, because it was a top 40 radio station. And one of the things that he always taught me, because I still had that Texas accent and still had kind of a ethnic sound, if you will. And he just said, you know, if you're going to make it, you're going to have to sound generic. You got to sound generic. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He said, you know, people shouldn't be able to tell what race you are. Wow. And that way you can, and the reason he said it, he wasn't being racist. What he was trying to teach me is that way you can work every format. You can work at all radio stations. And so that's what my goal was. And I think that I probably could work all stations now.
Yeah, you do have a very, I don't know what kind of sound in your voice, but neutral. You work generic. I
probably couldn't work a rap station anymore, which is ironic. Corpus Christi, after I got on the air, first ratings book, I went to #1. I stayed at #1. My wife at the time had decided she was fed up with my craziness, working crazy hours, and you know, I was probably the worst husband in the world. And so she moved to Houston. And I realized that I really missed her, so I said, I'm going to Houston too. So when I went, I didn't have a job in Houston. I just, I said, well, when I get there, I'll figure it out. And the day I was leaving, because my phone was the last thing that I took out of the house, the day I was leaving, the phone rang. And it was Magic 102 in Houston. And he said, hey, so, we heard your tape. And I said, really? Somebody sent you my tape? That's kind of my history. I said, yeah. And so, we want to know if you have any interest in working in Houston. I said, well, yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to head that way. You're headed this way? I said, oh, yeah, I'm moving there. He said, oh, my God. He says, well, come in Monday, talk to me. And I did, and he hired me right away. Magic 102 was the very first, what they called the urban format. It was one of the very first stations to be called urban. It used to be a black format, but the advertisers didn't want to advertise on black stations, so they had to give it a creative name, urban. And so the previous stations I worked at were top 40, rock, country. We played a little bit of everything. But Magic was the first station that ever played, some good R&B, and went to number one. Went to number one in Houston. It got to the point to where I couldn't really go to malls. You would think one of the Jacksons showed up. Because in Houston, the DJs are celebrities. In LA, your DJs are just DJs. It's hard when you go out and you got Eddie Murphy sitting over here, Denzel over there. Who the hell is Greg Mack? In Houston, the DJs were the celebrities. And so we got treated as such. Had a lot of fun in Houston.
You go from Magic 102 in Houston to Kday in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. How did that transition take place? The transition took place because our competitor, Magic 102 in Houston, was trying to get me out of the city. So he had sent my tape to Kday. Jack Patterson was a program director, and Jack had called me and said, hey, I'd like for you to come to LA. I've heard your tape. I'm like, okay, I've heard that one. But 1580 Kday, and that was in August of 1983 is when I moved out here. I used to look at the trade magazines when I was at Magic, and I always saw J.J. Johnson or Steve Woods or all the DJs from Kday were always in the magazines. And I was like, wow, I want to be like that. I want to meet all the stars. Like I was telling this guy that I had met out here riding in the car, I said, I'm going to take over this city. And he said, what? I said, nah, I'm going to take over this city. And he just kind of looked at me like, yeah, okay. But that's the way I felt about it. There were 5 black stations at that time. You had Cute, KGFJ, KJLH, K-Ace, and Kday. Kday was number 5 out of those black stations. We never felt that we were competing against, like KISS was a whole nother world. The FM stations, FM was just transitioning to where it was becoming a force. AM still had some love. And so, their goal within a day of me being here, that they had asked me, you got any ideas? We know you come from Magic and you guys number one in Houston. You got some ideas? And I says, well, let me think about it for a day or two. So after a day or two of living, because when I first got here, I lived in South Central, right in the heart of LA. All you had to do was roll your window up and you heard what was going on. You heard Run DMC, Sugar Hill Gang, Kurtis Blow. That was it. Everybody was rolling around playing their cassettes and blasting rap. But radio, other than nighttime, you wouldn't even hear it. During the night, you might hear it once or twice. So I went back to them and told them, I figured out what we need to do. And they were like, oh, no, that won't work. I said, well, you told me to figure it out. And so that's what's going on in the streets. And if we're going to win, we got to win in the streets. 90 days. It took me 90 days to I think we came in at number 2. Yeah, within 90 days. And it was instantaneous. I've always had that impact. Like wherever I go, we go to number 1 or 2 or whatever. But I think we would have went to number 1 if we were on FM. But KJLH would start playing some of the rap stuff we were playing to kind of beat us off,
to knock us down. I don't think that they were that competitive, but when you were transitioning between AM and FM and who was listening to what, and FM was starting to gain traction, they had an advantage. Not to mention they had a better signal. Kday didn't have the greatest signals, even though it was, a 50,000 watt station. I would say 45,000 of them were shooting across the water. We had more listeners in Hawaii than we did in Long Beach. But people found a way to listen to Kday because they liked the music we were playing. I've heard so many stories of people being up on their roofs in San Francisco or Bakersfield or Fresno, San Diego, just trying to pick Kday up because nobody in those areas played the music we were playing. People were, clothes hangers, antennas. I've heard all the stories, and it's so weird because the people that live close to Kday, we used to have to go to their homes and fix it so that they didn't get Kday because it was coming through their pipes and TVs. It was just interesting scenario.
Thanks for watching StreetTV.net. If you're not subscribed, please hit that button below and click the bell to receive alerts and notifications. Like and comment below to give us your feedback, and be sure to watch the 2 related videos to the right. If you want to support this platform or follow us on social media, visit the links in the description and listen to our weekly podcast, The Gangster Chronicles, every Thursday. And thanks for watching StreetTV.net.